The persistent struggle to control our spending is frequently blamed on a personal lack of willpower, yet this perspective ignores the biological reality. To understand why we spend, we must look back to 1954, when researchers James Olds and Peter Milner stumbled upon a startling neurological discovery. During a routine experiment at McGill University, electrodes were accidentally placed in the wrong brain region of their test subjects, the laboratory rats. The researchers provided these rats with a pedal that, when pressed, delivered a weak electrical current directly into their specific brain circuits. The results were immediate and alarming. The rats did not stop pressing the pedal, repeating the action hundreds of times every single hour. In their obsessive pursuit of this electrical stimulation, the rats completely abandoned their natural instincts, ignoring both their need for food and sleep. They kept pressing the pedal incessantly, demonstrating a drive that seemed to override even the most fundamental biological survival mechanisms of the animal. It turns out the region activated was not the nucleus accumbens, which is our primary reward system, but rather the brain's complex anticipation system. This discovery revealed that the feeling occurring before a reward, the state of anticipation, is a far more potent reinforcer than the reward itself. 70 years later, this fundamental finding serves as the theoretical bedrock for almost every major retail platform's current design decisions and user strategies. We often hear that dopamine is a reward chemical, but that is fundamentally incorrect. Dopamine is actually a chemical of pure anticipation. When a reward finally arrives, dopamine levels do not actually rise. Instead, they peak during the moments leading up to the expected outcome. If that anticipation is uncertain, meaning we do not know if the reward will manifest, dopamine levels reach their absolute highest possible point. This neurological mechanism is exactly how slot machines function, keeping players hooked by the constant, flickering promise of a potential future win. Similarly, this is the precise psychological principle behind infinite scroll design, which keeps users perpetually engaged by never providing a clear finish. Moving into the digital age, Amazon patented one-click purchasing in 2007, a design choice specifically engineered to eliminate friction between impulse and purchase. This design decision removes that crucial half-second of reflection, the moment where you might pause and ask yourself, do I really want this? When payment information is pre-saved, the brain experiences a psychological disconnect, often failing to register the transaction as a real, tangible payment. Even though the card is stored on a computer, the lack of manual entry eliminates enough friction that the typical spending threshold is easily broken. This is not an accidental feature of modern shopping. It is a calculated design decision directly informed by behavioral economics and academic literature. Consider the infinite scroll, which was originally designed by Aza Raskin in 2006 for LinkedIn profiles to keep users browsing for longer periods. The explicit purpose was to prevent users from pausing when a page ended, because a natural pause point creates a moment for reflection. That brief pause allows a user to ask, "Should I continue?" a question that inevitably cuts into the total time spent on the platform. By eliminating that pause point, infinite scroll keeps the user in a state of flow, and Raskin later openly expressed regret about this design. Then there are retail discount timers, showing text like 2 hours and 34 minutes left on this offer, which are designed to simulate urgency. This manufactured urgency temporarily bypasses the prefrontal cortex, which serves as our long-term evaluation center for making sound, rational financial decisions. As a result, the quality of our decision-making drops significantly, and the likelihood of us making an impulsive, unnecessary purchase increases dramatically. These are not mere flaws in the user experience. They are intentional design parameters built to maximize engagement and drive consumer spending habits. The result is clear. Research consistently shows that even a vast majority of high earners find themselves unable to accumulate meaningful long-term savings. Their income is usually sufficient to cover their needs, yet their spending perfectly matches that income, leaving them with very little left over. The common narrative of a character flaw unfairly loads the blame onto the individual for an outcome produced by systematic, expert behavioral design. We are essentially playing a game where the rules are rigged against our biology, making it incredibly difficult to maintain traditional financial discipline. However, effective counter-strategies do not actually require more willpower. They require the reintroduction of friction into our daily digital and retail environments. When saved payment information is deleted from your accounts, the ease of impulse purchasing drops dramatically, forcing a moment of conscious thought. When a digital shopping cart is left untouched for 48 hours, a significant portion of those initial purchase decisions simply do not happen. When distracting apps are removed from the home screen, overall spending decreases because the environment no longer triggers the same dopamine loops. In these cases, your internal willpower did not change at all. Rather, the environment changed, making it easier to make better financial choices. By recognizing these patterns, we can start to reclaim our autonomy from the systems designed to keep us spending without ever stopping. Understanding the science of anticipation allows us to see through the marketing tactics that were specifically built to exploit our human neurological vulnerabilities. Ultimately, the goal is to design a life where our environment supports our long-term goals instead of constantly working against our rational minds. We must learn to identify the pause points that these platforms try to hide and use them to regain control over our own behavior. It is not about being perfect or never spending money, but about making sure our purchases align with our actual values and needs. The next time you feel the urge to click buy, remember the rats in the lab and the dopamine loop that is currently being activated. That feeling of urgency is often just a signal that your brain's anticipation system is being manipulated by a well-crafted digital interface design. Take a breath, step back, and allow your prefrontal cortex to re-engage, giving you the space to make a truly informed, independent decision. By slowing down the process, you strip away the power of the design and return to a state of calm, deliberate, and rational consumption. This shift in perspective is the first step toward breaking the cycle of impulsive spending that has become so common in our society. You are not failing because you lack discipline. You are navigating a world that is engineered to make impulse the path of least resistance. Once you see the design, you can no longer be blindly led by it, and that awareness is your most powerful tool for change. Start small by adding one layer of friction to your most frequent spending habits and observe how your behavior begins to shift naturally. Whether it is deleting a saved card or unsubscribing from marketing emails, these small actions compound into significant control over your financial life. The goal is to move from being a passive consumer of these digital environments to an active participant who chooses when to engage. As we become more aware of these behavioral triggers, we can advocate for better design standards that respect our cognitive limits and well-being. Until then, we must be the architects of our own environment, creating the necessary friction to protect our resources and our peace of mind. Remember that your brain is a beautiful, complex system that was never meant to be exploited by infinite scroll and one-click checkout buttons. By reclaiming your attention, you are also reclaiming your ability to save, invest, and build a future that is truly your own design. The power to change does not lie in a sudden burst of willpower, but in the small, consistent changes you make to your surroundings. Stay curious about your own habits, stay skeptical of the platforms you use, and keep building the friction that keeps you in control. This is how we move past the cycle of impulsive spending and into a more intentional, thoughtful way of living in the modern world. It is time to stop blaming yourself and start changing the environment that makes it so difficult to stay on your chosen path. Retail design exploits our deepest psychological vulnerabilities by systematically removing friction from the purchasing process, turning shopping into a seamless, almost automatic experience. Modern platforms are built on a foundation of behavioral economics, where every interface element is calculated to keep you engaged and spending. Features like one-click ordering are specifically engineered to eliminate the critical half-second decision window where a consumer might normally reconsider a purchase. In that tiny fraction of a second, your brain usually performs a cost-benefit analysis, but one-click technology bypasses this essential mental checkpoint entirely. This design effectively decouples the act of buying from the physical pain of payment, making money feel less like a finite, tangible resource. When your payment information is already stored, the brain perceives the transaction as less significant, lowering the barrier to impulsive consumption. Similarly, the artificial urgency created by countdown timers forces the brain to bypass the prefrontal cortex, which is our long-term evaluation center. These ticking clocks create a false sense of scarcity, triggering a stress response that demands immediate action to secure the perceived reward. This pressure leads to impulsive decisions that would simply not occur under calmer conditions, as the brain prioritizes immediate action over careful deliberation. Because these are intentional design parameters rather than accidental flaws, the common narrative that high earners fail to save due to character flaws is misguided. We are not witnessing a failure of individual discipline, but rather the successful application of behavioral science designed to maximize corporate profit. The system is built to exploit the same dopamine pathways that once kept rats pressing a pedal, ignoring their own biological needs. When we blame ourselves for overspending, we ignore the sophisticated architecture of the platforms that are designed to keep us in that loop. The solution to this cycle is not to rely on the fragile, limited resource of willpower, but to redesign the environment by introducing friction. Friction is the enemy of impulse, and by reintroducing it, we can regain control over our financial decisions and our long-term savings goals. Simple actions like deleting your saved payment information from every retail site can dramatically decrease the speed and frequency of your impulse purchasing. By forcing yourself to manually enter your card details, you create a mandatory pause that allows your logical brain to catch up with your impulses. Waiting 48 hours before finalizing a digital cart is another powerful strategy that allows the initial dopamine surge to naturally dissipate. In many cases, a significant portion of those planned purchase decisions simply do not happen once the initial emotional urgency has faded away. Removing shopping apps from your home screen further reduces the ease of access, making it a conscious choice rather than a habitual reflex. These small, deliberate changes in your digital environment act as a buffer against the sophisticated behavioral design patterns used by major retailers. You prove that behavior is often a reflection of the environment rather than the individual, and you can change your environment to serve you. By intentionally adding these hurdles, you are not failing to be efficient. You are successfully protecting your resources from predatory design. Ultimately, shifting your focus from willpower to environmental design is the most effective way to break the cycle of endless, unnecessary consumption.